In our first reading, we encountered Samson, who at one time served as a judge over Israel. Judges were there before kings. When the Israelites got into the promised land, they didn't have a king. But whenever there was a need for a certain task to be undertaken, God would raise someone charismatic to take him through that task. And when that task was done, then that was done. They didn't have a king per se. Of his great physical energy. Much as he was the leader of the community, one thing that he possessed was physical energy, and he used it in many instances to defeat and to overcome and to subdue the Philistines. And you can read the book of Judges, the story of Samson. There are many things that are said, and two instances stand out that demonstrate that he was a very strong man. In Judges 14, there was a time again he was in the land of the Philistines, and they wanted to harm him, but he woke up earlier than they had planned to confront him, and destroyed their main gate, and took it away with him, carrying it on his shoulders. So he was a man of great strength. But the writer of the story attributes that strength by saying the Spirit of the Lord came. Whenever Samson was to do a certain task that needed physical energy, the writer of the book of Judges says, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson. Meaning, much as the physical energy was seen as something that he possessed all the time, the writer of the book of Judges is clear that it was a gift from God. And that's why he will always introduce it as the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson. And the twist of the story, however, takes place in the portion we have just read in our first reading, where it is written, he awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out and as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. So the writer of the book of Judges was right, that the physical energy that Samson had was not just out of proper nutrition, proper exercise, and all things that we attribute to physical energy. Because if anybody is strong, we will say, oh wow, these people have been keen on their nutrition. These people have been keen on exercise. But the writer of the book of Judges is attributing that physical energy to the Spirit of God. And that's why it got to a point where, since Samson took the physical energy for granted, even when he lost it, he still assumed he had it. And that's the portion we have just read. That he assumed he would get up just like he had done before, and fight the Philistines as he had fought them previously. But he didn't know that the physical energy had been taken away by him who had granted it. So we should never take the granted for granted. One as if you will. What you have been granted, don't take it for granted. Because Samson had been granted physical energy. But maybe he assumed, as you and me would assume, that we are physically strong and well, as I said, because of our feeding, because of our exercise. Some will even tell us because of the family they come from. That in my family, none of us is weak. Yes, I am very strong. You may look at me and think I'm very strong, but I'm the weakest in our family. There are guys who will tell you that. Guys who are six-pack, and they are telling you that they are the weakest in their family. So you can imagine how the others are. But God is telling us even that physical energy, much as it may come as a result of those other things, but it is granted. And that's why Samson was able to use it for a time. but he was not able to use it all the time because it was taken away. So the writer of the story is, among other lessons, intending to underline the fact that God grants physical strength and can take it away. And why would he grant physical energy? Because maybe there are things he would want us to accomplish using that physical energy. That's why he has granted it. That's why Samson had been granted it, because he was a judge over the people of Israel. Our second leading captures a call of Apostle Paul to the Romans that they offer their bodies as a living sacrifice to God. That they offer their bodies as a physical sacrifice to God. This sounds weird, as sacrifices were never of human bodies. In the Jewish religion, Judaism, when you wanted to sacrifice, you got an animal, and once you got that animal, you put it to death, then sacrificed it. But here Paul is saying, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. That's why I'm saying it sounds weird. One, sacrifices were never of human bodies. Even dead ones were never used for sacrifice. Two, nothing was ever offered as a sacrifice while alive. So Paul is saying something new, that we can offer to God our bodies while we are still alive. This is something very strange. This brings a new meaning to the concept of sacrifice. Live human bodies, ourselves. Praise be to God. Apostle Paul is bringing home the point that our physical bodies, our strength is required in the ministry. Because previously people thought about animals that they would offer. But you're saying, even as you offer the animals dead, God requires your physical body. God requires that you worship him with your physical energy. And that relates to what we have just gone through in regard to Samson. That what physical energy he had was required by God for his glory. So these two lessons consequently lead us to the subject of stewardship of talent, which is the topic that is learning today. Before trying to understand stewardship of talent, it is good to point out that there is also the stewardship of time and stewardship of treasure, which are topics by themselves and will not be our concern today. But before we embark into understanding the stewardship of talent or stewardship of abilities, what is stewardship? Christian stewardship is the realization that a Christian is entrusted with God's possessions and is supposed to take good care of them. It is also realization that we should offer a section of what is entrusted unto us to God in worship, in appreciation that we are just but stewards. We need to remember that even as we try to understand the stewardship of talents, the stewardship of abilities, we must first remember that stewardship is the realization that we have been entrusted with God's possessions, and that part of those possessions should be used in worship because they are granted by God. Then, with the understanding of stewardship, then we can understand what is talent. What's a talent then? Because we have said that there are three forms of stewardship: stewardship of time, stewardship of treasure, which are not our concern today, and stewardship of talent or abilities, as many will put it. Talent is any spiritual or mental or physical gift, or all of them, that human beings possess, granted by God. So if you have physical energy, that's a talent. If you have mental energy, that's a talent. If you have a spiritual gift, that's a talent. Some may be fortunate to excel in the three. Some may be fortunate to excel in one. Others may be fortunate to excel in 2 or 2.5. It is all and something that we should remember is granted to us by God. Let's look at spiritual, in that aspect of spiritual talent, spiritual ability. And I have listed a few. The ability to pray. There are some of us who are granted the ability to say prayers. And when they say prayers, we feel like we are at their doorsteps of our Lord, because they have that gift. There are some who possess the gift to heal, not necessarily medics, but there are people who pray for us and lay their hands on us, and we get well. There are those who are gifted in singing. There are those who are gifted in preaching and teaching. There are those who are gifted in leading worship. All those are spiritual gifts. And as I said earlier, they must be used to the glory of God, because it is God who has granted. And in the same way he had granted Samson physical energy, which he withdrew at some point, we should realize that those spiritual gifts are granted. They have not come as a result of the family that we come from. It's not because we are trained, particularly in areas of preaching. Those of us who have been to a seminary or done some courses, we may assume that because of that training, we have become preachers. The gift of teaching is not as a result of attending a teacher's training course. The gift of singing is not as a result of attending a music academy. Much as, those talents can be enhanced by those and others, but it's a gift, a spiritual gift granted by God, and therefore it should never be concealed. Once you have it, please don't hide it. And you should not suppress it because it's granted by God, but it should be used joyfully. Praise be to God. Sometimes we take it for granted. The fact that you're able to preach, to teach, to sing, to lead worship, to do all those, you assume that it just happens. In the same way Samson assumed that when he was told by Delilah, Samson, wake up, the Philistines are about you. And in his sleep, he said, I'll just get up the way I'm used to. He didn't know that the gift had been taken away. In the case of spiritual gift, there's a man called Gehazi. You can read about him in 2 Kings chapter 5 verse 20 and 27. Though it was not his gift, but it was a spiritual gift that had been granted to the prophet of God, Prophet Elisha. Elisha had used that gift to heal Naaman. But Gehazi did what we say where I come from. He wanted to use somebody's grass to milk his cows. Do you say that where you come from? That you want to milk your animals using the neighbor's napier grass. This guy called Gehazi wanted to do that because it's not him who had healed Naaman. But when he realized that there were some goodies that Naaman was carrying, he wanted to take advantage of them. It was a spiritual gift not granted to him, but he wanted to take advantage of it. But God is categorical that once you have been given a spiritual gift, it is to his glory. It is not a money-making gift. Therefore, Gehazi wanted to make wealth, much as that spiritual gift was not his. And if you read the portion I have just pointed out, you realize what he suffered. He really suffered. He really suffered. But I have not come to talk about Gehazi. I'll talk about him next time. But you can read about it in 2 Kings chapter 5 verse 20 through 27. Then there is a very interesting story in the Acts of the Apostles chapter 8 verse 17 through 23, again in regard to a spiritual gift. The spiritual gift was given to Apostle Peter, John and Philip, and they had gone to the land of Samaria. And as they ministered, there was a guy there called Simon. Simon was very impressed by this gift these people had, and he wanted a share of the gift. So he told them, men, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. I want that gift. And I have money in my M-Pesa. Just give me your pay bill, I'll pay. I have realized you, Peter, I have realized you, John, and you, Philip, you are granting the gift of the Holy Spirit to people so easily. You are just granting it. You are just dishing out the gift. Why don't you just sell a few milligrams of it to me? I have the money. Money has never been my problem. My problem has always been where to find it. Hello? This guy says, I have money. In my account, in my M-Pesa, I have money. I want to buy this spiritual gift. And Peter, because Peter knew that spiritual gifts are not for sale. Spiritual gifts are for the extension of God's kingdom. God has granted them to you and me to his glory. And he can withdraw them if they are not used to his glory. He told Simon to hell with your money. Be doomed with your money. Because these are not for sale. I have been granted that gift by God for free. I therefore cannot sell it. So the examples of Gehazi and the examples of Simon is in many places called Simon Magus. Sounds like he's Kikuyu. Magu had an S at the end. Simon Magus. That was his name. The guy who wanted to buy spiritual gifts. Maybe he wanted them to tell him how much, how many kilograms, for how much, so that he could buy. And today, by the way, anybody who wants to sell or buy spiritual gifts, or what we call ecclesiastical gifts, is accused of practicing the sin of simony. It's a new vocabulary. Simony is the sin of selling or buying ecclesiastical or spiritual gifts. When I come here and sell the gift that I have, tell you for healing, you need to pay this much. For recovery, you need to pay this much. For prayers to pass your exams, prayers for visa, this much. Fertility in your farm, I hear you have an exhibition, is it for business? Yes. If you want to excel in your business, this is how much. And even I have some oil for sale. I even have some soil that I have got, holy soil. Yes, and I can see a few of you are farmers. So if you could buy a few kilograms from me and shower it on your farm, you have never exercised such harvest. But it's not for free. I didn't bring it with me for free. Some have already started believing that I have it. That is called simony. And this is what Magus wanted to do. He wanted to buy it from Peter, so that while they are away, he can also give it out to people. But Peter, unlike Gehazi, is aware that spiritual gifts are not for sale. They are for the glory of God. They have been granted fully for the glory of God. Praise be to God. That is as far as spiritual gifts are concerned. So the fact that you are able to pray, and you pray and things happen, you are able to heal, you lay your hands on people, or you pray for them even whether they are in hospital or not in hospital and they get well. That's a spiritual gift. The ability to sing and sing well. The ability to preach and to lead worship are God-given spiritual gifts. And you can see what Gehazi got for trying to use a spiritual gift for sale. Then the last item in that category is mentor. The ability to excel academically is God-given. Sometimes you may assume that you did well professionally because you were served. No. I'm sure those of you who are of age like me were in school with guys who are very smart academically, but they never excelled. So it's not a question of being smart academically. It's divine. There are guys who are very smart in school, but they could not afford school fees, or they fell sick, or they decided they did not want to continue with learning, so they didn't excel. Not everybody who does not have a certificate is daft. Those guys you see out there and they do not have any certificates, maybe if they got an opportunity to go back to school, they would excel. And those of us who excelled, assuming you and me did, it's not because we were served, it's God's favor. You and me had to repeat some classes. Yes. The teachers were in fact very patient with us. If it were not for their patience, we would not have excelled. We failed quite a number of exams, although we pretend we didn't. Particularly when we are talking to our children and they haven't performed well. We tell them how we excelled, how good we are at writing compositions, how good we were in doing sums, how good we were in arithmetic and geometry. Yet we couldn't correctly spell the word geometry. So it is God's favor that here we are now. We have a certificate in something, a diploma in something. We are now professionals. They call you an accountant. They call you a lawyer. Yet your background is not as good as it looks. They call you a teacher, an architect, a mason, or whatever title they give you, a professional title that you trained in. That requires mental gifting by God. And you should remember then, if it was granted for God, it should be used to edify His church. Praise be to God. Yet here we are, withholding those gifts and pretending that we got them because of a lot of labor. Yes, I know that we studied hard. We woke up early and slept late. Yes, I know that we walked distances to go to school. Yes, we had so many homeworks and assignments to do. But you know, to be in good health and in good shape, to excel there, you needed the favor of God. Therefore, that mental gift was granted by God and should be used in many cases, in all cases, to the glory of His God, of His kingdom. We should therefore be ready to offer this ability in the service of God and humanity. And we encounter one professional in the Bible called Luke, a physician who worked diligently alongside Paul in the Lord's vineyard. Colossians chapter 4, verse 14 tells us that Luke was a physician, but he took time out of his busy schedule to work for the Lord. He also found time to write the gospel under his name, the gospel according to Saint Luke. That is a physician who wrote it. And he also wrote the Acts of the Apostles, where in several parts he is active in the story. If you read Acts of the Apostles, which is also written by by Luke, which is a continuation of the story he started in Luke. Because as he opens Acts of the Apostles, he says, in my previous book, he's writing to someone called Theophilus. He tells Theophilus, in my previous book, I told you about Jesus and the ministry, and now I continue telling you other things in regard to that ministry. This is a physician, Dr. Luke, taking time to serve. And in the Acts of the Apostles, he does not just report what happened. There are sections in the Acts of the Apostles where he says, I. He says, we. Meaning he was part of what was happening. In the pain and sufferings, he was there. Yes, he talks about Paul. He talks about Peter. There are places he talks about them. But there are places in Acts of the Apostles where he says, we. Meaning, He was there. A doctor, a physician, a guy who was qualified to do medical work, but was glorifying God. We assume, much as we may not have a lot of evidence, that when these guys suffered physical ailment, Luke was at heart to take care of them. The apostles, because he accompanied particularly Paul in his missionary journeys. And we assume that whenever Paul had a physical challenge, and it looks like Paul had a physical challenge, he talks about a thorn in the flesh. He also tells the Galatians that when I was amongst you, if I would have asked for your eyes, you would have given them to me. And we assume he had an eyesight problem. Why doesn't he say your ears or your legs? He says, when I was amongst you, if I would have asked for your eyes, you would have given them to me. And people say, you see, he is saying eyes because he had an eyesight problem. And we know where the problem started. You remember Damascus Road? You remember the bright light that confronted Paul? That is when he started wearing glasses. Hello? Yes, that's why he says, if I had asked for your eyes, you would have given me, because on Damascus Road, he had a very bright experience that affected his eyesight. And even if you read the Acts of the Apostles, there is a portion where he is arrested. And the chief priest wants him slapped. And Paul is very rude to the chief priest. And people ask Paul, you dare speak rudely to the chief priest? And he responds by saying, I didn't know it was the chief priest, meaning he had not seen clearly. In other words, Paul, if he had any physical challenges, as we assume, those are our own interpretations anyway. It's not very clear that such things were happening. But if they were ever happened, Luke must have been at heart, because he was a physician and he was with him. He was using that mental gift, that professional gift, to the glory of God. Praise be to God. Finally, physical. We have dealt with spiritual, we have dealt with mental. Physical, we had already talked about briefly during our study of Samson. Our good health is God-given. Remember, there are many who are groaning in bed as they cannot move, and who have it than them. We must therefore physically attend church services as you have done. You have used your physical gift to come to church, and you will not receive any payment for coming. Praise be to God. Physical energy. Physical energy. You should use that physical energy to attend meetings. And you should avoid unnecessarily sending apologies, as many of you as are used to, telling those in the meetings that we are with them in spirit. Yet the Bible tells us to be absent in body is to be present in the spirit. Meaning that when you are absent in the body, then you are present in the spirit world. You are dead. There are those of us who claim to be, and that's why Paul is saying that we should offer a physical sacrifice, a bodily sacrifice, meaning that where it's wanted that we do it physically, we should be there. Don't say that's your spirit anymore in meetings. Because some spirits are also not very good. When they are sent in meetings, we never get a breakthrough. We need your physical body so that you can help us deal with that spirit. When you spell that's your spirit, could be the reason that our meetings sometimes take too long, because of the spirits that were sent by some people in the meeting. That's why we are always quarreling, sometimes disputing in meetings, because of the kind of spirits that were sent. And these guys who sent their spirit in meetings never sent them to bank. When they want money in the bank, they never send their spirit. Yes, even when they want to eat food in a cafeteria, they never send their spirit. One of these days, dare, if you are employed as a teacher or a doctor, to send your spirit at your place of work. Dare. You will receive a dismissal letter. Yes, tell your employer tomorrow, I am with you in spirit. Therefore, brothers, sisters, Paul exhorts Christians to offer their physical bodies as a living sacrifice to God, meaning that he wants them to physically attend to things of the kingdom, to be there. We should use our physical energy to clean, to carry loads, to lift things in God's vineyard without complaining. In conclusion, brothers and sisters, as observed in our first reading, we found out that a talent can be withdrawn by the giver, as was the case with Samson. Once a gift has been granted, a talent has been granted, an ability has been granted, if it's not used to God's glory as Samson did, it can be withdrawn. Don't take it for granted. Reading through that scripture, the gift was withdrawn as it was not used for God's glory. And maybe it became a source of personal pride. As I said, the gifts that we have been given, the fact that you are physically strong, sometimes you feel proud and walk with a sword. Because you are physically strong, you can even push us and shove us out of your way. You forget that is given by God. Use it to the glory of God. The fact that you are a professional is mentor, is a talent. And you are very proud that in your village, you are the only lawyer. In your family, you are the only architect. You are the only accountant who does trial balances so well that you are required at the treasury this afternoon. Beware of not using that gift to God's glory. And you can, the next question will be, where do you use it? You use it at all levels. You use it at the family level. You use it at your place of work. And use it in God's service. Suppose we need a certain service that requires physical energy. And you are here. And you are strong. Must you charge us to do it? Suppose we need some professional assistance. Of course, there are occasions that we must charge, but must we always get it at a fee from you? Yet it has been granted freely by God. Do you know the giver can take it away? When we need spiritual gifts in the church, must we be charged for it? I'm not saying that we cannot pay for certain services, because the people who have those gifts also need to pay their bills. But sometimes we exaggerate, we overdo and forget the giver. We celebrate the gift and forget the giver. We must use our physical energy in active use, just as Luke is a good example in that area. We should never misuse or misunderstand God-given talent as Gehazi did, because Gehazi, much as it was not his gift. But if you read that portion, he says, hey, our master has made that guy just go away so cheaply. That guy has been granted good health that he has just gone away with the silver and gold. There's a problem with our master. And since he does not want to become rich, mimi sikufi maskini, siwezi kuwa natembea na yeye, pesa inakuja tunaiachilia. Wacha yeye atosheke vile alivyo na umaskini, but I'm going to get something out of that spiritual gift. And since Elisha had been given that gift in a big way, even when Gehazi was doing all that, the Spirit was able to tell Elisha that Gehazi is not up to any good. And therefore when he comes back pretending that he hasn't done anything wrong, Elisha tells him, hey, Gehazi, why are you panting? Where are you from? And Gehazi tries to tell some stories, and Elisha tells him, okay, I know where you are. Najua ulikuwa umeenda kukama ng'ombe na dhara yangu. And because of that, what What Naaman lost, you gain. Naaman lost leprosy. You become a leper. Because a gift had been granted, and you have, the spiritual gift has been granted, you have decided to take advantage of it. Misuse, misunderstanding of God-given talent, as Gehazi and Simon Magus, who wanted to make money or who wanted to purchase a spiritual gift. Yes, it's not for sale. Once again, brothers and sisters of PCA Kikuyu Township Church, each one of you who is seated before me and behind me and above me has a certain talent, ability. As I started by saying, it's either 1, 2, 2.5, or 3. Physical, mental, spiritual. I am sure if you take a good audit of yourself, you have those gifts. God needs those gifts to his glory. In your home, in the family, in your place of work, in the ministry. Are we enjoying that gift, or are you using it to brag, to boast, like Samson? Are you selling it like Simon Michaels would have done? Are you making money out of it unnecessarily, as Gehazi did? Use that gift to the glory of the Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's be upstanding.